In Bangladesh, there are no any opportunity, any proper education for our Rohingya refugees.
Isu Rohingya tidak akan dapat diselesaikan jika akar masalah di Myanmar tidak diselesaikan.
If we block them from entering the legal channels, why do we condemn they take irregular channels to do something as human as reuniting with their family?
Early this year, a wooden fishing boat packed with Rohingya men, women and children had been drifting without power for weeks until they landed in Aceh, Indonesia, some 1,200 miles away from they had first set off. They were hungry and weak after spending months at sea without any food or water. They are prosecuted in their home in Myanmar and brought with them accounts of the unspeakable violence that had forced them to flee.
That since the junta took over, there is less prospect for them to return home. So it is an ongoing crisis that have been ongoing for decades. And it seems like the world has forgotten. And then when there are some boats, we wake up and we remember that there is a problem.
Currently, there are 644 Rohingya refugees in Indonesia, arriving in 3 waves between November, December and January.
That we identified together with the local authorities, and then together with the partners that we work very closely with, they are transferred to a site. It can be an abandoned a school that is not no longer functioning. It can be, for example, in Luxembourg currently now, we have them in a building that used to be an immigration building. So we install the refugees there, we make sure that their basic needs are met, and often we also need to rehabilitate the building.
Children remain at risk of malnutrition and inadequate educational opportunities that may make them vulnerable to exploitation. To prevent that, UNICEF and partners have enrolled more than 300,000 children in classes.
Education is actually one of the areas where Indonesia has advanced quite a lot, because in 2019 there was a circular adopted by the Ministry of Education that allowed access to schools for refugee children, and that was further updated in May 22, where there was further facilitation listed, and so that refugee children can easier move from primary education to secondary education to high schools. And there is no geographical restrictions also. So we have a good framework to work on.
The numbers of refugees had grown in recent months as many sought to escape the overcrowded camps in southern Bangladesh, while more Rohingya who are still in Myanmar are leaving following the military coup. By taking the highly risky voyage at this time of year, they attempt to reach Malaysia, where there is a large Rohingya community.
many of the Rohingya refugees, they would like to go to Malaysia, which is, if you think about the reasons why, it's quite natural. It's family unification, and currently there is no legal way for Rohingya, or for that matter any other refugee in the region, to reunite with their families. There are no countries in Asia that actually allows that.
Most ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, are not party to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, which would otherwise legally oblige them to take in and take care of any refugee that arrives at their borders.
It is not only Indonesia that take in boats. There are other countries that have done so, but it is true that currently, and within the last sort of couple of years, it's mainly Indonesia that has stepped up and shown humanitarian leadership. And that is, of course, unfortunate when we talk about refugee movement and refugee situations and how to manage them. Because the key is to manage well refugees' situation and movement, it is to share responsibility. And I hope that Indonesia, when they take over, that they have taken over the 2023 Asian chairship, that they would look at this and try and convene the states to really address this issue.
Indonesia's foreign ministry has pursued a solution to the issue through many different ways.
There is certainly an understanding, mutual understanding, that UNHCR, IOM are responsible for the handling of those refugees arriving in the Indonesian shore. The Indonesian ministry, together with the task force set up by the Coordinating Ministry for Security, will facilitate in the process while they are in Indonesia. And as we discussed with some of the refugees, Malaysia is one of the countries that they are intended to visit. There are discussions certainly at the context of bilateral discussion, but mostly within the framework of regional conversation on these very issues. We have what we call the Bali process to provide a clear framework on how to deal with these issues. We will bring along countries responsible and also the so-called transit countries and the countries that's become the destination for the refugees. So we will also try to reactivate this process to enable we to have a more comprehensive solution to the issue.
One way that the Foreign Ministry is proposing is repatriation, which still leaves a question. Can the Rohingya return to their own homes safely?
Yes, of course, we want that these people, they are being repatriated into their own country, right? But on the other hand, we need to make sure that this repatriation will not sacrifice their safety and security. Because we know the reason why they are actually taking refuge to other countries, because they are being chased down, like their life has been severely threatened by the military junta, by the regime at that time. So definitely Indonesia will need to do an extra effort in this, not only campaigning or pursuing the policy of repatriation.
But there's hope for them in the upcoming Asian summit. Indonesia had been actively proposing solution to Myanmar crisis, including the 5-point consensus last year. Even though the consensus did not specifically discuss the Rohingya crisis, there is a pressure to stop the violence in Myanmar, which is believed to be the core problem.
Rohingya is only one of the axes of the internal conflict happening at the moment in Myanmar. So we cannot deal with any particular single issues unless we deal with the core of the problems. So one of the expectations is we can facilitate the peaceful transition process in Myanmar. So that will also include other related issues, including the issue of Rohingyas.
This year's ASEAN summit will become the momentum for Indonesia to show it can become the peacekeeper in the region. And the stake has never been higher. For the sake of humanity, for helping the Rohingya to find their home once more.
I know it's quite challenging because not all ASEAN members, they share the same view in terms of the urgency of the issue. But I think what is important for Indonesia is the pressure from the domestic public here is very, very strong.
Syara Mediana, Andre Saputra, Reza Nindita for See Today.